Hello and welcome to the top 7 squeakiest voices on YouTube.
That is to say, welcome to the top 7 best video cards ever made. You've seen the worst, now you're gonna see the absolute best ones ever created. Not necessarily the best performing. If I was making a show about those, you'd just see the Titans and the dual GPU cards, the ones that actually worked, and not much else. Now, this is a show about video cards that were both good and important. Cards that mattered, cards that did something, achieved something. Video cards that made video cards what they are today. Graphics cards that made graphics the likes of which, well, we all see today because we all have better graphics cards than what we had 30 years ago, but you get the general idea. That being said, let's get this started with number 7. The Silicon Integrated Systems 315. I predict 2 reactions from you right now. One would be that you have no idea what this card is, and 2, if you do know what it is, you're probably wondering why it's on the list of the best cards ever made. Here's my argument. This was released at the tail end of 2001. Matrox was on its way out, S3 was floundering about, 3DFX was basically dead. We were left with ATI and Nvidia, and odds were that along the way we'd lose one of them as well. The bubble had burst, if you will. And then out of nowhere comes the SYS 315, a $50 budget video card with up to 128 megabytes of RAM, and able to, well, it didn't exactly go toe-to-toe with the GeForce 3, which cost 10 times more, but this thing had power. It had hardware transform and lighting. It ran just about every game released up until 2005. Now, I'm not saying that this thing ran Need for Speed Most Wanted, like the first Need for Speed Most Wanted, excellently, but it ran it. It was playable. I finished it on this video card. Probably the only downside to it was the lack of DirectX 8.1 support, so it didn't have any pixel shader capability. Then again, most cards back then didn't. That's the reason why you would get games like Need for Speed Most Wanted in 2005, working without pixel shading. This card gave people hope. Hope that you wouldn't be stuck with just AMD and Nvidia and then one of them gets the upper hand and you have to spend $650 for just one goddamn video card that will run new games on the highest detail. It gave people hope. Hope which kinda didn't actually pan out because the later versions, the 320, 330 and the ones that were called Saber, weren't really that competitive, even though they had a console-ish style method of reducing resolution to keep up frame rate. It sacrificed texture detail for performance, and it didn't actually do that good of a job at it. Also, the drivers for the 315 were kinda problematic. You would have 2 of them on hand always, because one of them had good OpenGL support and the other one had good Direct3D support. For a long while, you couldn't get both of them at the same time. Number 6. The Hercules graphics card. The first IBM personal computer, the IBM 5150, came equipped with one of 2 graphics cards, a monochrome one and a color one. They were what you would call the first graphics cards in the sense that we know them now. Well, almost in the sense that we know them now, but they had their limitations, their Achilles heels, if you will. For example, they were completely incompatible with each other. You'd need 2 monitors, one for each if you had them both, because one of them couldn't do graphics and the other one, well, couldn't do text as well. And then came one of the earliest, if not the first, aftermarket graphics cards. Like the first graphics card you could plump into your PC and get it to upgrade to something better. That was the Hercules graphics card. This thing was released 35 years ago, and while although it was black and white, just like the monochrome display and printer adapter that came standard with the IBM, it could actually do graphics. It could emulate in grayscale, color. It could do custom characters, that being the impetus for its creation, because the person that made it, someone named Van Swanukul, who founded Hercules Computer Technology, wanted to be able to write in his native language, in Thai, but the IBM standard was not programmed with that in mind, so this came about. Now again, it was monochrome, so black and white, it couldn't do color, but it could understand it and render in black and white and grayscale an approximation of color, and it would be able to run games. It would be able to do just about everything that the CGA and the NDA could do with just one monitor and just one card. And this thing took off. It got cloned to hell and back, probably even more than the standard IBM hardware did. And later versions of it would get color, would get better performance, would even get a network adapter because as standard this one came with a printer port. It was a simpler time back then. You would have graphics card also contain a mouse port, much like audio cards had a joystick port for a very long time. Number 5. The Intel Larrabee. You may say to yourself again two things. 1. Larrabee was an outright failure, and 2. It was never released. Both are wrong. The thing you have to understand about Larrabee is that it was a completely different way of handling graphics. This was years after the legendary GeForce 256 defined what a GPU was. A single processing unit that contained all the bits necessary to make up a video card. Larrabee aimed to change that completely. This was not a GPU in the traditional sense. This was in itself a computer, one built upon x86 technology. It was a card filled with a heck of a lot of x86 cores. How many of them? Enough to emulate and software everything that DirectX 11 and OpenGL had to offer. And it did it well-ish. Keep in mind, it was cancelled before it was actually finished. But even so, you could plug it into a PC, it could be seen as a graphics card, and it could run just about every game you would download off Steam. Even though technically it was a separate computer, it behaved like a graphics card. And because everything it did was in the software, concepts like, well, you have to upgrade because you don't have shader model 5 now, didn't exist. You could just update the firmware and bang, you had emulation of shader model 5. Because x86, that doesn't have any shader pipeline. It's just x86. A lot of it. The reason why it was cancelled didn't have anything to do with its performance. It's just that Intel decided to not make a graphics card. But they did decide to keep it and use it for compute, because this thing could crunch compute like nobody's business. Compute shaders, oh my god, it just devoured them whole. So Intel spun it off into a dedicated compute unit, one known today as the Xenon 5. Knight's Corner, Knight's Landing, everything is based on Larrabee. Some models even still have the rendering output on the card, not connected to anything, but it was there. What could have been? What could have been if Intel had not decided to stop making Larrabee? If they had decided to not close down Offset Software and cancel the Project Offset video game, or at least the engine, because that thing looked superb back in the day. What could have been? Well, apparently AMD would have wanted to merge with Nvidia because Intel would have probably killed them all otherwise. But still, what could have been? Number 4. The ATI 9700 Pro, or the 9700 for people in America that can't seem to understand that 1000 comes after 100. What made this video card special, you may ask? Well, this was the VPU. It was ATI's answer to the GPU. This was their card, the one that they made to encompass everything that the GPU should be. They didn't call it a GPU because Nvidia owns the patent on it, and it's sometimes suing Samsung because of it, so they just call it the VPU, the Visual Processing Unit. And this was the first video card compatible with DirectX 9. And it was a powerhouse. It was a powerhouse in the age when the Nvidia FX series, the 5000 series, had yet to be launched. And you know that the top end of that series was kind of horrible in many aspects. And this thing had months on the market before that came out. This propelled ATI into having the majority share in the discrete graphics card market. Well, it didn't reach the peak with this video card, but with the other generation after it. But this one launched it. This one made it soar all the way to owning 55% of the market just 1 year later. Neither ATI nor AMD would ever again reach this height. Well, who knows, Vega may change that, but probably not. It's a really long climb back. One made almost impossible by number 3, the GeForce 8800 series. Now, I had a bit of a trouble deciding which video card in this series to actually put on this spot. Initially, I thought to myself, well, the 8800 GTX is the supreme. That thing was amazing. But just a year later, they launched the slimmer version, the more efficient version, the GT, which was the pretty much minimal requirement for video games up until a year or two ago. Heck, it probably still is for a lot of games. I even owned an 8800 Ultra and it was amazing. It blew up, sadly, but it was an amazing video card. This entire series was, well, not counting the rebrands that were kinda shitty, this series made Nvidia what it is today. This series propelled it to the very heights of success, the likes of which the 6000 and 7000 series could not do. The 8000 series gave Nvidia over 60% market share, and since then they have fallen below that only when they have launched duds like the GTX 480 and ATI launched the HT 5850 and 5870, both superb cards that were in the running for this position, but the 8800 series was just better. Historically, I mean. You have 8800 GTs and GTXs still running in computers today, still playing games, still being good video cards, limited only probably by their VRAM. It's kinda hard to run games now with just 512 megabytes, even on low resolutions, so they don't necessarily run them well. Number 2, the Amiga original chipset Denise. What is this, you may ask? Well, this was the main video processor of the original Amiga 1000. It may be stretching the term graphics card a bit, because it was part of a chipset, and for that matter you couldn't switch it out, replace it, or improve it. It was just there. But to be fair, I had to mention this because you know what this is, right? This is the heart of the Amiga, the heart of its visual processing prowess, its visual cortex, if you will, one that gave people in 1985 graphics capabilities comparable sometimes to arcade games. It gave people 3D capabilities in 1985. You know, when Super Mario Bros. Was released, when people were saying that, oh my god, scrolling changes everything, the Amiga could do actual 3D graphics. Not well, granted, it did them horribly, but it could do them. It enabled artists to create like they never had before. It even let people edit video, like video editing that we do today. You could do in 1985 on an Amiga, thanks to this processing unit. That's something that you wouldn't have on a simple commercial for the end user computer for almost another decade. So you're goddamn right I'm putting this on number 2, but the first position has to go, as always, to number 1. Voodoo. Voodoo 1 and 2, not the rest. The rest were kinda crappy. Voodoo is the reason we have modern graphics cards. Before Voodoo, they mainly did 2D. On occasion, one of them would draw polygon. But Voodoo changed things. It changed them immensely. This was one of the most successful 3D accelerators. It didn't have an output per se. You plugged it into your PCI slot and then games started working better. So you practically needed a video card in the first place, and then you had the Voodoo one with it. The same was true for the Voodoo 2. But in terms of actual performance, this thing murdered everything. It just killed everything on the market. It murderized them, it pulverized them, it annihilated everything. And not just through the sheer hardware potential it had, but also through the software, because this thing came with its own API, the Glide API. One that, well, I would say something that would get us banned off YouTube, but it involved fists and orifices to the then standard APIs of DirectX and OpenGL. Were it not for Glide, they would still suck. Much like were it not for Mantle, there would be no DirectX 12 the way we know it, or Vulkan. This thing was a game changer. It shook up the market to its very core. It motivated people to actually give a damn and try, and they did. And sadly, 3DFX sort of didn't try as much. It actually did its best to sort of sabotage itself, and for business reasons committed financial suicide, in the end being bought out by Nvidia, who now owns the technology that made Voodoo so good, like SLI, only then it was sort of different because each card handled half a frame, but that's not important. Well, that was it. Those were the top 7 best video cards ever made. If you have your own opinion, and I know you do, I've seen the comments on the last video, please share it in the comments of this video. Goodbye. Thank you for watching this show. If you enjoyed it, please consider watching some of our other videos and maybe sharing them or giving a thumbs up if you feel like it. And if you really liked what you saw, please check out our Patreon page. For just $1 a month, you could help us make much better shows and get some rewards in the process. Or you could consider buying my book called Tale of Doom. Volume 1 is out now and available for just $2. And as always, if you thought it was horrible, you know where to find me and complain about it.